Are you ready to talk about some professional wrestling for your Thursday night? Off the Top Rope is going to make sure that we deliver in that capacity. Join your boy Ty Asbury on Off the Top Rope Thursday night, live 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the CEV Sports Podcast Network. My guest from Wrestletalk.com, the one, the only, Nate Craver, joins your boy Ty Asbury. We talk about everything in wrestling from WWE, AEW, Big E winning the WWE title, anything you could think of, adding CM Punk and Daniel Bryan, a whole bunch of stuff on Off the Top Rope. Thursday night, watch it live. It is going to be some serious talking. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to watch the best wrestling podcast around with some sizzle, it is Off the Top Rope. Yeah. This is your boy Ty Asbury, of course, and it's Thursday night, so you know what's going down. Of course, it is Off the Top Rope, of course. Now, I'm a wrestling fan. We're all wrestling fans. That's why we're all here. And my live guest, I'm sure he's one of the biggest wrestling fans around. He knows what he's talking about, so that's why I'm going to him, because I got lots to talk about when it comes to wrestling, AEW, WWE stuff. My live guest from Wrestletalk.com. I call him Nate the Great Craver. Nate, what's up, my man?
Nothing, man. Excited to be here. Excited to be part of the show. Looking forward to chatting about wrestling. I always love doing that. Excited to be here. You know, I cover live results for pay-per-views and every Friday night for Wrestletalk.com. You know, get to cover SmackDown and now Rampage that it's on Friday night. So watch a lot of AEW, watch a lot of WWE. About anything you can think of, I love to watch. So excited to get a chance to talk with you tonight.
I really appreciate it, and I'm pretty sure by like your enthusiasm about being on the show, you're definitely a wrestling fan in the heart. I can tell it's in the heart that you're a huge fan. And I got to ask you, how far do you go back in being a wrestling fan? Because it had to start from somewhere.
Well, I'm older than I like to admit, but it goes. I mean, I don't remember a time where I haven't been a wrestling fan. I've got some pretty neat experiences from being a fan when I was little bitty, like 5 and 6 years old. I remember when I was 5, I got an opportunity to go to a WWF show at the time and got picked to do the Junkyard Dog dance in the ring with him, to catching a Hogan shirt, you know, in the crowd. And, you know, but where I grew up here in North Carolina, you had to be an NWA, WCW fan. So, you know, I'm in Horseman country, Flair country. So grew up watching them in Dusty Rhodes all the way back in the 80s, you know, TBS on Saturday nights, all the way through the 90s with the NWO and Steve Austin, and really haven't stopped since then. So just been a fan my whole life, known a couple people here and there who've done it and had an opportunity to get in, you know, to do this part-time, you know, something to do as a hobby has turned in an opportunity to write for the website. So been a fan forever, man. It's been great.
That's really cool that you, just like myself, experienced it back in the old days. And I'm sure we'll get on that more, that we kind of miss having the old days back, but, you know, times change. And I guess you have to, what's the saying? You have to change with the times, but we'll talk about more of that later in the show. Now, how was, I think what's still left of it, how was your summer and with Wrestletalk? Do you get real busy during the summer with Wrestletalk? People watching the show, like, how does that work? Or it's just whatever it is?
Well, you know, it's been really busy, you know, with all the different things going over there, you know, with the YouTube channel, and then the website, with all the new show, with the way that the summer has worked out, or the way that the programming has worked out this year. At one point I was doing live results every single night, Monday 3 hours, Wednesday Dynamite, and then SmackDown, with trying to cover Impact and NXT as well. So we got to the point where we had to add some staff, and I'm a dad as well, so I had to cut back some hours. So now I'm just doing live results for Friday nights and pay-per-views. But, we try to cover a lot of stuff. We've got, the Wrestletalk YouTube channel. We've got the Wrestletalk podcast channel, and then Parts Unknown, where you do some fun stuff like Quizzlemania and Explain. So lots of different things. Plus we've got a full writing staff on WrestleTalk.com, features, news, plus the live results every night. So it stays pretty busy.
Now, I want to ask you from the wrestler, you being a wrestling writer, from your wrestler writer, mind, how do you approach when it comes to writing a pay-per-view recap or a show recap, like from the writer's perspective? How do you approach that? Is there a certain writing style that you have, if that makes sense? Because everybody's different in terms of what they write. So how do you,
Well, yeah, it's interesting because there's two other guys that write with us. There's Connell Rumsey has come on, and he has that kind of sarcastic, quick wit kind of writing style where he can drop a one-liner in there and just make somebody laugh right off the bat. I would say I'm probably a little more serious in terms of how I'm not quite the jokester, although sometimes I will bust out a dad joke in there. I'm not sure everybody gets it, sometimes when I throw them in there. But for my style, it's more, when I'm thinking about a recap or thinking about live coverage, it's more about, is there, what was exciting in the match? What stood out? Obviously who won, who lost, any big angles in there. And then try to just kind of capture the moment, kind of give you that feeling of, what was that match like? And then throw in my 2 cents at the end about whether or not I thought it was good or whether or not something drove me nuts. Oftentimes when I was watching Monday Night Raw, it was more of the drive me nuts than it was something good. But, where it's something like you pinned the champion 6 weeks in a row kind of stuff. So, you're asking those kinds of questions, like why would you do that with your booking and things like that. So trying to point out the things that I think don't make sense, as well as, give credit where credit's due when something good happens.
Now, everybody's away for us. Now we're going to go into why, you and me are here tonight here on the show, about talking about pretty much the two top dogs on the mountain. That's WWE and AEW. Now, I think I want to start with, of course, AEW first, because they've been seeming to be in the spotlight lately with all the signings and the new show and everything. Now, how do you feel first about, we can go one by one, all these signings? I mean, CM Punk, Daniel Bryan, they got Andrade. Do you think it's, because everybody's saying, well, they got Vince's leftovers. That's always been the thing. But do you think it's good for AEW, or they got too much people at the party where it's going to get too crowded? How do you feel about that, Nate?
Well, I think, I think back, if you look at wrestling history, sort of like when it was that boom period in your Monday Night Wars or whatever, when you look at that, you saw a lot of folks jumping ship, right, back and forth between WWE and WCW. And I think that created a lot of interest in the product for both brands. But I think where you were really successful is when you took a guy who maybe didn't quite have, who didn't quite have that character that was over in one brand. You brought him in, still had some name recognition, but you tweaked that character, and then it took off. Like, I think Steve Austin's the perfect example, right? He comes in, he's stunning Steve. He goes to ECW, gets a little bit more edge to him, and then he finds that Stone Cold character who blows up in WWE, excuse me. And, and then you had those guys that were already established who could jump across, like when Hogan made the jump. Obviously, he's not going to change his character until he becomes the NWO. But I think where AEW has to be careful, and I think what they're doing a pretty good job of right now is they're taking some of these guys that were in WWE, and the ones that didn't quite hit home runs, they're changing their characters up enough to where they're a different person in AEW. Like you look at Miro versus Rusev, right? Miro's a different guy now in AEW. His character is 1,000 times better. But then you have a guy like CM Punk, right, who's over. You don't really need to change a lot about CM Punk, right? And you don't have to do that because that character is one that folks want to see just like he was. Whereas Miro, people want to see something different because they were frustrated with how he was booked in WWE. So I think so far they're doing a pretty good job of balancing that sort of in between. Now I will say that I do, like I do worry with this recent influx of folks. Like there might be some folks who might get lost in the shuffle. Like I feel like Andrade is one of those guys right now who hadn't quite caught on. So, I think there might be one or two guys, and then, hopefully some of those guys that were starting to creep up towards that main card in AEW don't fall down and get lost. Like Sammy Guevara is one of those guys who was really, I felt like he was about to hit that major face run.
He was there, yeah.
Yeah, and then since all these signings, he's really kind of been an afterthought. But you can't push. You got a roster of 150 guys. You can't push them all at the same time. But I think with Punk and Bryan or Danielson and even Malachi Black, I think fans want to see those guys and want to see them used in the right way and reach their potential.
And like you said, where does that leave Sammy Guevara? I mean, I love his gimmick is one of a kind. I love him, Orange Cassidy. Like, because actually it's funny because me and my wife were talking about it. It's like, where's Sammy Guevara? And then he appears on Dynamite or whatever. So, and I'm a huge. I know he's always staying the character. I love MJF, and when where is he going to be? So, and like you said too, Nate, they're doing a good job at giving the people what they want, but the people who started there, you don't want them to start slowly.
Yeah, it worked out. It worked out nice with Hangman Page wanting to go on paternity leave, right? So he's not getting pushed down because other people are there. He took a break himself. But the rumor is Sammy's in line for a big program like this Fuego del Sol thing that's happening on Friday night with the car, where he's putting his car up. Apparently, that's going to lead to a Sammy and Miro program, which I think you put him back in that TNT title picture. And he feels like he's that big, it gets that big program again. So I'm excited to see where that goes.
Now we all know, of course, Kenny Omega, who I love. The guy's a workhorse, current AEW champion. Nate, do you think he should lose the belt to an AEW guy, or should he lose it to Daniel Bryan, who former WWE guy? Who do you think he should drop the strap to?
Oh, I think it needs to be like an AEW person. Personally, I know the Hangman Page story has kind of lulled since he's been out, but I still think Page is the guy to do it. I think he's the guy that's got to take it off of him. You look back at like TNA during the TNA days and Impact days, when they would bring in these WWE guys, they'd automatically put the title on them. And then, AJ Styles or Samoa Joe take a back seat. So I think if AEW learns from that, like they've got to keep their guys, those young stars, those guys that have that potential, they got to keep them rolling. So I think, I think you bring Hangman Page back when he's ready to come back, and he's the guy that takes the strap off of Omega. I don't think Danielson is the guy. I just don't think he's the right guy to do it. I mean, I'm happy that they made that match next week a non-title match. So, that takes that out of the equation.
And I think the fact that it's a non-title match was very smart on AEW's part because it gives the fans a little preview of what can come later. So I think that was smart for Tony Khan to do that and have it in a non-title match. And it was very, very creative. Now, everybody who's watching the show live, we got the comment section. This is the episode tonight. You want to comment, whatever me and Nate are talking about. We're all wrestling fans here, so definitely shoot them up in the comment section. So we are talking about some hardcore, definite wrestling tonight here on Off the Top Rope on this Thursday night. Nate the Great, of course, is my guest from Wrestletalk.com. And I want to go back a little bit, because Miro, formerly Rusev, you're exactly right what you said. When he was in WWE, it's like he was getting there, and my thing was, he was always losing to Cena. And I'm just like going like this. It's like I don't know what they're going to do with him. So I think to me, he had that feud with Cena where he lost a lot. I think that hurt him a lot when he was Rusev. To me,
Well, every time he'd get up there to that tip or to that tipping point, WWE would pull the rug out from under him. You got Happy Rusev Day. I about said Miro Day, Happy Rusev Day, and then they break up him in English, right? Or Lana's getting over with Big Heat, and then they break them up and take Lana off of him, and then they put him in that horrible marriage triangle thing with Lashley, right? And so it's like he did the best with everything they gave him. He turned it into gold, but then they were like, nope, let's end it, or the push failed or whatever. But yeah, I think he's really that redeemer character. AEW didn't start, that the gamer gimmick with Kip Sabian wasn't quite hitting on all cylinders, but they adjusted, and this redeemer character, I think, he's really found a home in it. But you could see every time he got those start and stop pushes in WWE that he had what it took to be a top dog. But for whatever reason, WWE would bring somebody back, Cena, or and it would always go to someone else.
Yeah, because when he was with Miro was with Kip Sabian, and he was the best man. I was like, as big as he is, as a stud as he is, I just don't get it. And somebody said, I don't know if it was Tony or somebody said, dude, lose the arcades and this guy's a machine, and look where he's at now, just steamrolling through people. And I like watching. Honestly, I like him. I like to see him beat people up. But
yeah, well, he's really good. I mean, he's believable in that role, and the way that he wrestles it, it just fits perfect, right? So,
because every time he goes to do his move, I kind of yell. My wife shakes her head and he says, "Game over." I always do that when he does that. But he's definitely on the money right now, and I see him having the TNT title for a while. The dude's a beast.
Yeah, I don't know. Like you asked about who should take it off Kenny Omega. I don't know who's going to take it off Miro. I do like that they the one thing that I think they've done a good job with. Sometimes when you have that beast guy or that beefcake man you can't take over. The Braun Strowmans of the world. How's a guy like Sammy Guevara going to beat him? How's a guy that's smaller than him like Adam Cole going to beat whoever it is, right? But they've done a good job of giving him an out, right? They talk about his head and his neck being a weakness, so the DDT is his kryptonite or whatever. So if there's somebody who comes along who I can't think of anybody off the top of my head new, but imagine Jake the Snake was back from the 80s with the DDT, right? So Jake the Snake would be the perfect guy to come in and take that off of him because of the DDT, right? So that gives you a way that you see him beating him. So I'm not sure who that guy is yet in AEW that's going to be the one that has the move that can take him out, but they've defined the way that you do it, right? So you work on his neck, you work on his head. So whoever that expert is at that eventually has a way to beat him. I'm not sure who that's going to be. I mentioned Adam Cole. That might be a guy that might be a good guy to have that strap on at some point. And obviously with the Elite backing him up, there's a pretty easy way to write in, a cheating to win, but obviously you don't want to do that heel dynamic. So I don't know how they get to that point.
Now we did the AEW wheel. Now we're going to go to the WWE wheel because Nate brought up Braun Strowman, and Nate, how did WWE mismanage Braun Strowman? I mean, the guy, I know he's a big guy. In wrestling, you see big muscle, you see money. And I just don't, you got to finish it for me because I just don't understand how they dropped the ball with Braun Strowman.
Well, to that one point, I don't know that they ever gave you a really way. Well, I mean, I could give you a 10-page essay on this, I think, but I think the short version is, they never really gave a way to beat him, right? And so at some point you get kind of tired of just watching the guy beat people up, right? But then you look at the things that you look at him in his role, and we talked about Rusev when he was in WWE, right? So when you think about Braun, like he wasn't making the most out of everything, in my opinion. that they could, because some of the stuff they saddled him with, it was just not, it didn't make sense. He's tagging with a 10-year-old. They make the choo-choo train sound when he's running around the ring. That whole feud with Kevin Owens, where he's supposed to be the good guy and Kevin Owens is supposed to be the bad guy, but you have him doing all the bullying things, like tipping him over in a porta-john. And so, like, it just was like everything that they did, they booked him backwards from what they could have done. And you look back at how they booked Andre. Andre was that big lovable face, and then when he turned, he was that mean monster heel that you just didn't mess with, and then you had to have that Superman Hulk Hogan come in to beat him down. Well, they never really built him up as that monster heel, because they kept cutting his legs out from under him where he would lose so much. And so they didn't ever commit, in my opinion, to either making him the big face or to that monster heel. And it was too many flip-flops. They did that with Big Show, right? How many times did Big Show turn back and forth? So
definitely want to thank, we got a comment up there. We got Rich Johnson said he's watching. Thanks, Rich, for watching the show. Much appreciated. Anybody want to comment, any questions, whatever, for Nate the Great, definitely kick them out here off the top rope, because we got a couple minutes left of the show, but it's definitely shaping up to be a really cool show with Nate Craver from Wrestletalk.com. We're talking about WWE, and everybody, you can say everything WWE, the ratings, the same people all the time. The list can go on and on and on. Now, the big question, Nate, for this is, we know WWE is towards kids, but is it because it's towards kids, or is just a bad product right now?
I think, I do have some signs of hope from the last few shows, right? This Monday night and the previous Monday night, the crowds were fantastic. I thought, I can't remember where they were last week, but this week they were in Boston. But, they've had two really good crowds in a row on Raw. And when the crowd gets into it, it makes you feel more excited when you're watching it on television. And yeah, I do think that they do target kids, but at the same time, they've got some adult-like stories that you have to be, have a certain level of comprehension to understand, like the Roman Reigns tribal chief, some of those nuances between him and Heyman. And then, but then you mix that with, guys throwing pancakes out, or, dolls that wink at you. And it's like, you aren't really sure what you're watching, because it seems like it's all over the place, right? So it doesn't seem to have that consistency. In my opinion, you're 1 minute you're watching something where it's supposed to be sports based, and then the next minute you have to believe that somebody has magical powers, and then the next minute you've got somebody throwing pancakes. And so, it's hard to flip that switch so quickly in between these things and stay in that moment, right? So it seems like they can't decide what they are. And so when you aren't sure what you are, it's hard to be anything. And so, like, I think that's their issue, is like they just need to decide and stick with it, and then cater to that audience. And whatever that audience is, you can't be everything to everybody. So they've got to be what they want to be, instead of trying to do comedy and wrestling and sports and movies and scary horror stuff. So it's like, whatever it is, just be it, right?
I really believe too, and if everybody agrees, I love to hear everybody what they have to say, their opinion, that I think in a promotion, what WWE is doing, it starts from, in the back, the writers. It's out there is what you write and put out, and that could be the problem. But me always being a WWE guy, I see it, and sometimes I'm like, I don't understand it. But I do tune in because Brock's there, Randy Orton, the people we grew up watching, all those guys. But it's like you said, hopefully they'll find their identity and stick with it, because, like you said, they're all over the place.
Well, and I look at, like, Big E wins the championship, but which I like. Big E's a great, deserves it. I'm glad he cashed it in. I question whether or not it was the right time. Like, I feel like they rushed it a little bit. But at the same time, you look at Bobby Lashley, who, in my opinion, has probably been the best champion, at least, in the last couple of years through the pandemic and even before that Hurt Business run. And then him with MVP has been one of my favorite things for him to be the champion. And then they go and they break up the Hurt Business, right? And they take away a faction that's super over because it was getting too over, and they're supposed to be the bad guys, right? So you're like, okay, well, you had something organic here that everybody loved, but because it didn't fit they couldn't adjust on the fly because it didn't fit the narrative, right? So they had to break it up so that it would fit their narrative instead of adjusting on the fly and saying, you know what, this got over, so let's go with it and run with it. And so instead of taking something that could have really taken off, they kind of cut its legs out. And so, I think when that's the one thing that they struggle with is when something happens to catch fire, they either run it into the ground or they don't let it go, and so they have a hard time with that balance. But I'm interested to see what they do with Big E. Supposedly there's a plan in place for how they're going to work him going forward. So when the draft comes up, I'm excited to see how that all shakes out. I was really kind of hoping he'd be the one to take it off of Roman and be the guy. But I will settle for him taking it off of Lashley because I'm excited to see him as champion.
Yeah, you brought a good point up too. Like you said, when people in WWE, they get at a certain point, like what Rusev is having the Big Show, they just pull that carpet from underneath them and they're left like, you're like, well, what happened? But we are towards the end of this episode of Off the Top Rope. So Nate, all I got to do is I do this to every guest. I got to put you on the spot. So you talked about earlier all your favorite wrestlers. Dusty Rhodes, the Hulk Hogan's and everything. It's up to you if you want to. Can you give like a quick, brief impression of one of your favorite wrestlers?
Lord. Well, my favorite wrestler of all time is Ric Flair. So, I mean, the easiest thing to do with him is just to be the man. You got to beat the man. Woo! That's, I've got a chance to meet him in a bar one time. So that was great. That was always fun. So, I live pretty close to Charlotte. So I run into him a couple of times. So that was always fun. So.
Yeah, I heard Nate is the partier, but God bless him. He's still doing this thing. He appeared in NWA, so Nate's is doing this thing, and God bless him and doing what he loves to do, and that's being in the wrestling ring. So now, Nate, everybody wants to know what's up with you next for Wrestletalk.com, any projects, all your fans. Let us know what's going on for you moving ahead.
Well, the next big thing I'm excited about is I'm heading, I got a chance to go to AEW when they came to Charlotte, and I got to go meet a couple of guys and do some talking backstage and stuff with the press pass and things like that. So the next thing that's on my radar is Wrestlecade, which I don't know if you guys know, if anybody follows, but Wrestlecade has been something that is a show that gets put on in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, every year. And so if you're in the area or interested, have some time, it comes out. I wish I could remember the date, but it's at the end of October, 1st of November. And it brings in a lot of independent wrestlers who haven't signed contracts, mixed with some legends. But now with the way AEW does business, they allow their folks to come there. So like the Wrestlecade champions, Matt Hardy. And so it's an opportunity. It's kind of like StarCast on a smaller level, where you get to meet and greet. They have panels and things like that. So I'm trying to set up some interviews, set up some opportunities to get some guys to talk to. So, Braun Strowman, Adam Shear, I think is what he's going by now. He's going to be there. Whatever the Iconics, I can't remember what they're called now, but whatever they're calling themselves on the independent, they're going to be there. Several AEW guys. So I'm trying to set up some things where I get opportunity to talk with them. But yeah, that's sort of the next big thing for me is heading up there and trying to do some media, for them. And then, I'd love an opportunity. One of my favorite things to do is interview wrestlers. So any chance I get to do that for the website's always something cool to do.
Well, Nate, keep doing what you're doing. You're making us all proud. You're doing what you love, and you're doing some great things at the conventions. Of course, Wrestletalk.com. And from 1 to 10, would you ever come back here on Off the Top Rope and party it up again with Ty Asbury?
Oh, definitely. Enjoyed it. Been a great show. I don't, give it a 10 out of 10, of course, 5-star rating. Even we'll break the scale, right? We'll go 7 stars. But yeah, anytime, man, I'd love to come back. I love talking about wrestling and, love to be here. Love to meet other folks who love wrestling too. So I always enjoy it.
Well, Nate, thanks for coming on the show. God bless and keep doing all the great work you're doing. This is your boy, Ty Asbury. Nate, it is really cool. Ric Flair. I'm just going to do the peace sign. We're out of here. And thank you for watching this live episode of Off the Top Rope. We're out of here. Woo! Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to watch the best wrestling podcast around with some sizzle, it is Off the Top Rope. Yeah.